So in this video, I want to talk to you about creating a list of questions to ask the interviewers. And this is something again I've done that really helped me connect with the interviewers much more deeper level, and also kind of if the interview is not really going my way by the questions I ask the interviewer. I've seen that they kind of change the tone, they change the way they connect with me, right? So this is one of the things that I would tell you, like, take time to essentially do is to essentially create a list of questions that you can ask the interviewer, right? So also something to remember is that you are essentially going to be spending over about more than, maybe depending on the type of work you were doing, over 35 hours with the company, right? So the people that you're going to be working with. So it's a good idea to get to know them. What kind of things that you're asked to do, what kind of things that they have in their mind that they're hoping or they're expecting from you, right? So that's why I tell you, for anybody who's going through my coaching, is to create a list of questions that you want to ask the interviewer, and make sure they are obviously well thought out and not something that not something that you can easily get from the job description or from their website. Make sure that you're asking questions that shows your experience and the mindset, and I've seen that in my interviews that when I went to interviews before, the type of questions I asked the interviewers have obviously has made their opinion about me much better than it was before I started to ask the questions, right? So I'm going to show you some of these questions that I asked the interviewers from my side when I was doing interviews, and these are some of the questions I even asked some of my students to ask as well. That really helps them to develop a really deeper connection with them and get to know and understand the interviewer at a much more both personal and a professional level, what kind of problems they're essentially going through and why they're hiring for this for the position. So here are some of the questions that I generally love asking the interviewers that have given me a lot of success in terms of improving the perception they have of me. So the first one, I usually ask them, what are the personality characteristics that you're looking for an ideal candidate when they're hiring for this position, right? So the answers I get to this is very interesting, and a lot of the times they tell me that nobody asked them this question before from them, so they kind of have to ask the question, answer the questions as they're going. But a lot of the times you can see that they're kind of mimicking or talking about some of the characteristics I already have, right? So it seems like they kind of resort to kind of looking into characteristic or talking about characteristics that they that you might have actually. So even if when you're talking about them, they let them know, like, what, that's interesting that you say that I've been known for actually those characteristics and those things to have of myself by previous managers and my friends, right? So you can let them know about that. And the next one is ask them directly, what problems and challenges that are you trying to solve by hiring for this role, right? What are the specific problems and challenges they're experiencing that compel them to hire for this role, right? So here we really get to understand what kind of problems and projects and issues that they are trying to deal with through your help, right? So asking these questions will literally show the interviewer that you really care about doing well in this role and getting to know and gathering the information that is necessary to help them, right? So that's one of the things that I can tell you. When you ask that question, it's something that really opens up essentially the conversation much more deeper, that you can participate rather than they are interrogating you or they are interviewing you. You can literally get to know, using their own words, what kind of problems they are going through, and then talk about some of the experiences that you had that was very similar when you were working in your projects. And another question I ask generally is, what are some of the challenges that I could be facing in this role? Again, it shows the way your ability to investigate, your ability to do analysis, your ability to want to solve the problem, right? When you ask questions similar to this. And you can always ask another question like, can you describe how a typical day would look like? What would I be doing day to day, right? So you can kind of ask that question to get an idea about how does your typical day would look like. And another question I ask, how does your onboarding plan for this role looks like, right? So what is an onboarding plan is essentially a plan that helps you have a successful transition into the role, right? And ask them if they have one, and if they have one, what does it look like? Where what are the key things that that you want me to complete, that you want me to kind of get to know or learn about, right? Ask them if they have that. Again, asking these questions makes them think that we are very organized. You focus on creating plans and things like that. The next question I asked, what are your expected 30, 60, 90-day plans for this role? So this is a more of a structured way of asking the previous question. What are you expecting from me within the first 30 days? So what problems do you want me to work on? What challenges do you want me to work on? And what about for 60 days? And what about for 90 days? Right? So when you ask this question, it really again shows your ability to think more constructively and think in an organized way, where you can essentially ask them to explain what kind of work are you expecting in these time periods from me, right? Again, it shows your ability to think in an organized way. And another question I usually ask, right? So some of these questions you can see they're similar in nature, but you can ask the one that you feel most familiarized with, right? So you can ask about maybe 2 to 3 questions or maybe 4, but don't try to ask all of them because some of them are overlapping, right? So I'm just kind of showing you some of the questions that based on what you're comfortable asking that you can ask. And then one of the questions is, what are you hoping this person will accomplish in their first 6 months and first year? And then essentially let them talk. Again, shows your ability to think clearly and think about the future and care for the things that they care for, right? And one of my favorite ones that I learned was this one is, it's the if you were to fast forward 12 months, what would you have happen for you to feel like this particular hire have been an overwhelming success, right? So essentially this question kind of asking, what do you care for as as success for this role, or as success for the person who's starting for this role? So it kind of cut down all the other unnecessary things about personality and everything, or personality and your accomplishment, and really talks about what they actually want you to accomplish in order for this position to be successful, for this position to have been useful for them, right? So these are some of the questions I generally ask in interviews, and some of the things that I tell my students to ask as well when they're going into interviews. So add some of these to your document, so you can essentially ask them during the interview. Again, like I said, it will, most cases will put you in a positive light, because of how well thought out these questions are. And, don't just ask about, what your salary and things like that is. Actually ask about the role and the challenges. The focus really should be to understand what is really the challenge that they are experiencing, and what are their challenges and issues and the problems, and what kind of goals are they working on. Really getting to know about them is really what's key in an interview, right? And then bringing it up, and then when they talk about some of those challenges, you can talk about how you have been faced with similar challenges in previous roles. If not, you can talk about how fast you learn, how quickly you think you pick up things. If it's a skill or it's a specific ability, you can talk about how quickly you can pick it up and help them master, right? So one of the things I talk about, my ability to learn and pick up a new technologies, tell them like, look, when I was graduating from university, I graduated from psychology, not in tech, right? But after a few years, me studying, me learning, I started to be able to develop websites, create emails, send emails, use social media very successfully. So what really makes you think that I cannot be successful at this skill or at this role that you're referring to, right? So I kind of, use that kind of mentality to kind of ask that question back and let them know, look, this is something that I can definitely do, even if I might not have the right experience. And if I do have the related experience, I just talk about, you know what, I have something that is similar that I've gone through and went through in my past when I was working for this and this company, and these are the actions we took, and these are the kind of the results we had, right? So those are the way I approach asking questions from the interviewer, and using even those questions to kind of give them more insights into my ability to essentially solve problems, or learn the thing that they need to solve right away, or show them that I care about their problems enough to show them that I can come and work with you and able to essentially achieve their goals that they need. Okay, so essentially that's what I have for this video, and I'll see you on the next one.